Hello and welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment or so. We'll give folks another minute or so to log in, and then we'll dive in. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, again for being here today, and welcome to our Better Buildings, Better Plants webinar. We are dedicated to bringing you the latest and actual insights from leading industry experts. Better Buildings and Better Plants webinars are a chance and really an opportunity to explore topics, technologies, and trends that affect your organization. If you go to the next slide. Today's webinar is titled Team Up, Strengthening Internal Collaboration for Impactful Energy Savings Projects. And just a couple housekeeping notes towards the top before we get started. Today's webinar will be recorded and archived on Better Buildings, Better Plants Solution Center. And then we will follow up when that recording and the slides are made available. Next, attendees are in listen-only mode, which means that your microphones have been muted. But if you do experience any audio or visual issues throughout today's webinar, please go ahead and send a message in that Q&A box located at the bottom of your Zoom panel, and our tech support team will be in touch. If you go to the next slide. My name is Bree Colin, and I serve as one of the buildings leads for the Better Buildings, Better Plants initiative, and have the privilege of serving as today's moderator for this webinar. If you go to the next slide. We have a great lineup for today's webinars. We're going to start off with some introductory polls, get a pulse on our virtual audience, and pose some questions related to today's topic. And we are joined by our wonderful presenters coming from the city of Richmond, Virginia, as well as the University of Pittsburgh. Finally, we'll close with some Q&A and then some final programmatic updates coming from Better Buildings, Better Plants. If you go to the next slide. First off, we'll dive into those polls so folks can take a moment to go to our interactive platform that we use for Q&A and polling called Slido, and take a moment to go to www.slido.com on either your mobile device or by opening a new window in your internet browser. Today's event code is hashtag or pound DOE. And if you'd like to ask our panelists questions throughout their presentations at any point, please submit them using this platform, and then we'll answer those questions towards the end of the webinar. You can select a thumbs up icon to upvote questions, which will result in the most popular questions rising towards the top of that queue. If you go to the next slide. Without further ado, if folks want to head over to Slido, we'll start off with those few polls. And if you do, again, have any issues, please go ahead and send a message in that Zoom Q&A box, and then that will get over to our tech support team to help support. So we can see folks already off to the races with this first question. Wanted to get an understanding of who's in our virtual room today and what sector best describes your organization. So we can see a strong showing already from our higher education colleagues. We have a lot of contractors here in the audience so far, industrial representatives. Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking time to enter this information. It's great just to see a wide variety of folks that are here. We have local government, multifamily, state government. Great. You can scroll down potentially and see some more that are being entered. We have commercial real estate showing, healthcare, K-12 schools. Thank you so much for taking the time to enter that in. We can go to the next poll. Similarly, curious to learn a little bit more about folks in the audience and what role that you hold within your organization. We know there are a lot of different roles and responsibilities, and it's really great to understand what types of duties folks may be executing within their organization. So we can see a great showing already of present energy managers, sustainability practitioners. Seeing others coming from federal government, state government, environmental health and safety. All really crucial elements, getting to this topic of collaboration across organizations, seeing a lot of different types of representative departments here present on today's webinar, which is great. We have some resiliency folks, and definitely a lot of like energy managers, engineer representatives. Folks coming from the owner operator perspective. Well, thank you all for being here and for sharing that information. That's really helpful just to understand what types of roles our audience are holding at their organization. If we go to the next poll, this question is really getting at, for our virtual attendees today, what successful strategies has your organization employed to strengthen collaboration in achieving your own impactful energy savings projects? This could be thinking through things that either are you're potentially in the process of implementing and have found success either in that iteration to maybe something that you've employed and been successful that's been decades long and could be something that really is a foundation and have found success in. So I'm seeing certain things like financing, definitely been a big strategy, and working closely, I'd assume then with a lot of folks across offices to that effect, and how you've really worked to collaborate with a variety of different entities in that. Collaboration with a variety of different SMEs, subject matter experts, across different practice to make sure that those projects are really optimized. Communication, I'm seeing that as an impactful strategy, definitely. Monthly meetings, I think that really gets at, something related to that communication is making sure that folks are having regular touch points with a lot of different entities. Networking, yes, definitely key there. Cross collaboration, maybe I'm seeing a lot of like research topics too. So making sure that folks are leveraging researchers, be it even internally, externally, to make sure that those projects are successful. Wonderful. We'll give folks just another moment or so on that. Energy task force. Yes, that'll be great. We're going into some presentations about some successful strategies related to that. So excited to hear more about strategies related to creating a type of task force and how to make this successful. Wonderful. We can go to the next poll. For our final question, kind of on the flip side, what are challenges that your organization has experienced when working towards collaboration to achieve those impactful energy savings projects? Maybe it could be, thinking about some of the successes around communication. It could be challenges around breaking down silos, making sure that folks in any type of decision-making process are looking around the room and saying, who's not at the table and who is at the table, and being impactful to and intentional around incorporating a variety of different perspectives and entities that can help in that success of those energy savings projects. Wonderful. I'm seeing some skepticism, maybe some myth busting too, that happens through some of those conversations. Sometimes it can seem organic to bring a lot of folks together, but then realizing it takes a lot of that intentionality. Prioritization, really making that business case and making sure that it is seen as a priority to those across the offices, no matter what their core functionality is, but really framing it to ensure that it is a priority across. Yeah. Motivation, I think that's huge. Availability, maybe capacity. Folks are wearing so many hats a lot of times in organizations. So building that trust, I'm seeing as something that can be challenging too. Volunteers, finding folks, this could be something they're doing on top of their normal job, is participating in helping that success of energy savings project. Time, that's a big one. Folks are volunteering. Funding, definitely. Great. Some resistance maybe to certain things that folks are working to comply with. Competing priorities, maintenance needs, trying to figure out and grapple with where to start, and those that maybe there's some resistance to those that have been working at the organization for a while and trying to introduce some new concepts. This is all really rich. Thank you so much. And I think it'll be great to dovetail into our presentations too and help inform our presenters, just understand what are some of those challenges that you've experienced. All right. Well, happy to dive into our presentations. Thank you again so much for interacting with those introductory polls. We're going to start off first with Dawn. Dawn is with the City of Richmond, Virginia. She's the Energy Program Manager. We're thrilled to have her here with us today, and I'll turn it first to Dawn.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Dawn Alexi. I'm the Energy Program Manager for the City of Richmond, Virginia's Office of Sustainability. All of those challenges, I think we're all in this together, preaching to the choir, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about what has worked for us in Richmond. We've all been part of or observed or even led these teams. Sometimes they don't have the right representation and they're ineffective, or maybe not the best use of our time, which is already limited. Maybe we're good at some things, but not others, or short-lived, or fall apart with staff transitions. So I'll tell you what works for us, which comes from what I've learned from others over the years, my own experiences with Richmond and with other localities, and then ongoing lessons learned from constantly shifting priorities and administration, staff turnover, capacity constraints, etc. Bottom line, remain flexible. So I'll go through the slides pretty quickly and give an overview, first explaining what JET is, how we got started, what I see as the 10 necessary steps for success, and then I'll finish with some showcase slides of some of our wins. So take notes, ask questions at the end if you want me to go into any more detail, and of course I'm always available after this webinar if you want to deep dive a little more. So next slide. What is the Joint Energy Team? Well, first of all, Virginia is the capital of the state. Richmond's the capital of the state of Virginia, where we manage and maintain over 100 buildings and facilities. We employ over 4,000 people, maintain over 2,600 vehicles and equipment in our fleet department. We own a water treatment plant, a wastewater treatment plant, a natural gas utility, and maintain our own streetlight distribution system. So there's a lot going on in little old Richmond, Virginia. This is a matrix model because we have staff that work across departments and projects at the same time. And so after 2 years of lots of conversations and meetings and program development, including the drafting of the charter and kickoff presentations, we launched this in the fall of 2023. Next slide. So how do we define success? Well, it's an interdepartmental strategic planning body with over 100 decision makers from all departments and levels of the organization that drives clean energy initiatives. We're saving money. We are changing the employee culture toward energy efficiency. We're building recognition. We're staying on track with long-term climate goals and improving operational efficiency, tracking progress in alignment with mayoral priorities, building relationships, and breaking down silos. It's become a model that's recognized throughout the organization and is even being replicated internally for other cross-cutting initiatives. So successful so far. Next slide. So how did we start? Well, so many questions. These are the basics. Who should be on it? How often should it meet? How does it make decisions? What are those overarching priorities? What are the short-term versus long-term goals? What policies and guidelines already exist? And what do we need? Next slide. So I'm going to walk you through what I see as the top 10 steps for success. And this first one is step 1, create a framework. In our case, it was a 2-page charter to formalize the team. Next slide. Step 2, refer to the charter as the framework, but then go back to those basic questions to clarify the operational and strategic goals to formalize the details. Next slide. Step 3, what is the committee structure? How can we break it down further? So take a look at those goals, those short-term goals, and figure out how to break up into working groups. These can evolve from year to year. For example, the Energy Education Committee was initially the Energy Conservation Committee because we knew that we had to draft an energy management administrative regulation. Once that was completed in year 1, we realized that implementation required a great deal of education. So now that committee is focused on employee education. Next slide. Okay, step 4. dig a little deeper into that representation. So, who need to be the champions of the work, even if not intimately involved in the ongoing working groups? And then who are the administrators who make sure that it's elevated operationally across the organization? And then finally, those representatives, which departments, divisions, offices, and even individuals need to be included. Over the years, I've worked with, I know who the movers and shakers are. So even if they weren't necessarily appointed by a director to be on the team, I knew that they needed to be in the working groups. So getting that brainstorm of representatives was really important, which of course builds year to year. Next slide. Step 5, set the expectation for accountability. So prior to the kickoff meeting, I recruited staff members to serve as points for the initial committee breakouts. And then at the kickoff, I passed out name tags and assigned everyone to a committee based on what I thought would be most fitting. Of course, that has evolved as their interests and maybe roles have evolved. But to get them started, there's a lot of let's make this easy for everyone. So during the breakout at that first kickoff meeting, they established their own facilitators, meeting schedulers, note takers, and reporters and got to know each other. And then at the end of that meeting, they scheduled their next virtual committee meeting, again, make it easy, and came up with a list of first next steps that they would need to address in order to accomplish their committee goals by the end of that fiscal year. So really kind of put it to them to break it down without, assigning too much, because this has to work into their own already, uh, deep work plans. Step 6 is on the next slide. So figure out what tools you're going to use for data tracking, file sharing, work plan development. This is going to include a fair amount of education, so keep the expectations simple. Again, this has to be accessible to everyone. So while you, as the program administrator, may use a bunch of tools to keep everything on track, from portfolio manager, we use Energy Cap, GIS maps, whatever it is, set yourself up for success by not overwhelming your teammates. Step 7 is on the next slide. So this is important to me. I'm scheduling a specific 1-year timeline, including the meetings, the project development, the deliverables, the reporting. I base ours on the fiscal year, so it aligns with the budget request cycle and allows us to enhance a lot of the pre-development work that goes into energy-related initiatives to be even more impactful and efficient with resources. I know the majority of those challenges I saw on the poll were funding and budget and ROI. So really paying attention to the importance of that is really important. So across the top, the blue squares are the all hands meetings every other month. And then in between those are the committee meetings. And that's up to the committees to schedule at their own cadence. Some of them meet bi-weekly, some of them meet once, some of them meet kind of ad hoc. But they have their homework between the all hands meetings, so they know what needs to happen so that they're reporting back at the all hands meetings. And then it sets up the schedule for usually in the spring, there's a draft deliverable presentation, letting everyone know what is going to be expected at the June all hands end of year, where everyone presents their final deliverables. Okay, next slide. So step 8, I've mentioned the importance of accountability. This is a model that our Office of Sustainability uses for the implementation of all of our climate and resilience work, and it's called the Shared Accountability Framework. So the elements of this are really important. And again, it's not linear. It's not a one-time thing. It's ongoing. Transparency, a culture of improvement, building those trusting relationships, institutionalizing sustainability in city government, and then regular evaluation. So continuing that is what's really building that the accountability. And then one way to really build those elements is by inviting the committees to present their own projects on a regular basis, giving them the stage to showcase their efforts. Reporting is key to that shared responsibility. And on the next slide is step 9. So communication has to be accessible. Whether you're using email groups or SharePoint or standing calendar invites, quarterly bulletins, whatever. Our Office of Strategic Communications has been a tremendous asset by building the branding and developing materials that really help educate and showcase the importance of our work. So you can see our JET logo. We have templates for presentations and documents and our newsletter. We have pins that all of our members wear proudly, journals and notebooks, blankets and fans that go out with our educational materials. All of this helps bring the kind of brand recognition of what the Joint Energy Team is and a sense of pride among the members. And then next slide, finally, step 10. I mentioned this work is evolving. It's not linear. So please continually go back through those first 9 steps with regular evaluation. We do 2 surveys each year of JET members to ensure continual improvement, and be sure to divide the work and delegate wherever possible. It helps build ownership across the board and institutionalize sustainability and grow that energy efficient culture at the same time. Next slide. Okay, so wait, but how do you actually build the buy-in and keep it going? You can't just get everyone in a room, as you all know, and convince them that this work is important, right? So I might be able to create a pretty graphic that makes sense to me, but that's not what's important here. Next slide. So that strategic alignment is really the key. You have to be able to show how the work aligns with their own initiatives. In Richmond, we have our RVA Green Climate Equity Action Plan, which is where most of my work is built from. We have the comprehensive plan. We have the mayor's agenda. We have our transportation plan and our stormwater plan. And so showing where the overlapping energy related initiatives are embedded in each of those is a really great place to start. Next slide. And then back to the annual deliverables. It's really important to be able to produce products that showcase the fruits of their labors that you can build on from year to year. So some of our, whether they're plans, a more formalized street lighting, LED retrofit plan or EV contracts, EV charging contracts, new processes, maybe some software or database updates, pilot projects, trainings, policies, actually coming up with the fruit of their labors and being able to point to that is a great tool. Next slide. And of course, dollars, they speak to everyone. So putting together budget requests and building the business case for all of the innovative projects coming out of the team puts this complicated work into terms that everyone can understand, dollars. So while the budget requests, they look great, they're rarely funded, right? We have these already, put together innovative ideas that are ready to go when the dollars are available. Next slide. And of course, showcasing the savings really speaks volumes. So be sure to constantly point to that. Next slide. So now just a few of the success stories that have come out of the Joint Energy Team. This first one is an energy conscious culture with an established quarterly energy awareness bulletin, an energy management administrative regulation that was adopted by our mayor and our CAO, and then the correlated educational materials to help with the education. Next slide. Along with the work of our EV Transition Committee, Richmond was ranked 16th last year for our green fleet and first for our EV policies. So we're very proud of that recognition. Next slide. I mentioned our street light distribution utility. We own 39,000 street lights in addition to all of our outdoor lighting at parks and facilities and public parking decks. And as you know, those LED retrofits, that's a quick win with some high upfront costs. So showcasing that progress and the importance of allocating those dollars and prioritizing them and those cost savings is a very telling story, and shows great success that everyone can visibly recognize and understand and talk about and share. Next slide. As I'm sure many of you know, progress on renewable energy takes time. So to be able to report on this in alignment with our net zero by 2050 goal really helps to keep up the momentum on our long-term strategies. Next slide. And finally, what really helps to build that political will is showcasing to the council members and community advocates what this work looks like in their own neighborhoods. So we provide an annual report to City Council. Last slide. So we're all in this together. And while I can put the pieces together and tell the story, the thanks really goes to all of my team members who keep this work moving forward. I believe several of them are here today, so please know that the recognition of Richmond's success really goes to you. And thank you to all of my peers across the country for taking the time to hear about Richmond's efforts toward our collective clean energy transition. And I will pass it back to Bree.
Thank you so much, Dawn. What wonderful sentiments too to end on. Just appreciation too for folks here coming from your team as well as those peers across. I know there's a lot of rich information there that folks would be excited to think about what are components they could take back to their organization and implement on the ground. So great success story and knowing that it's continuously evolving. So thank you for sharing that. All right, we go to the next slide. Before I turn it to our next presenters, I just want to give a brief reminder for our virtual audience to send in any questions. I'm seeing some flow in, which is amazing. Please input any questions that you have at www.slido.com with that event code hashtag or pound DOE. And we look forward to answering those questions towards the end of the session. Next up, we have Dr. Aurora Sherrard, who is the inaugural Assistant Vice Chancellor for Sustainability, and Evan Petrak, who is the Senior Manager for Energy and Utilities with the University of Pittsburgh. Thank you both so much for being here with us today. I'll turn it first to Dr. Sherrard.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Bree, and the U.S. Department of Energy. We're very excited to be here to talk to you about what's going on with the University of Pittsburgh on building efficiency advancements. Whereas Dawn really talked about the how and the process behind things, we're going to focus a little bit more on projects today. So if we can go to the next slide. Just some fast facts about the University of Pittsburgh. We were founded in 1787. We have just under 30,000 students, another 15,000 faculty and staff, over 150 buildings, and over 15 million square feet. That is very urban, right in the middle of the city of Pittsburgh. Next slide. Also, we have a number of strategic plans, and the point that I want to emphasize here is that energy efficiency, energy use, energy sourcing is all an important part of each of these plans. It is baked in to the university's strategy from both the highest level all the way through our campus master plan, sustainability plan, and climate action plan. Next slide. The University of Pittsburgh's been on its sustainability journey since the 1970s. When you look back, that first marker, for many of you that have been working in this industry for a long time, it's energy conservation and efficiency in buildings, right? That's how many folks started down this path, and Pitt is no different. How we've embedded energy use and efficiency as the keystone of our work over time has grown. It has academic curriculum and research behind it now. There's a lot of student work at the University of Pittsburgh. And in 2020, we made a commitment to be carbon neutral by 2037 for our Pittsburgh campus, and subsequently adopted our first climate action plan. So really starting with energy, ending with energy, and continuing on with energy and carbon is where Pitt is focused. Next slide. We have a number of national and local certifications and rankings that demonstrate our work in this space that I'm not going to go into, but being a partner of the US DOE as part of Better Buildings and Better Plants is definitely a key part of that work. Next slide. We also have our governing document in the world of sustainability at Pitt is the Pitt Sustainability Plan. It has 61 goals across 3 impact areas, really touching on every aspect of balancing equity, environment, and economics so current and future generations can thrive. Not just about our built environment, but also pulling those themes through the academic mission of the institution and our partnership with our neighborhoods. Next slide. So I mentioned this goal before. One of the key goals is reaching carbon neutrality by 2037 while reducing greenhouse gas emissions 50% by 2030. Built right behind that goal is an energy use intensity reduction goal for our buildings, striving through for the International 2030 Challenge target of reducing EUI 50% below 2003 national CBEX median baseline by 2030. Next slide. So there are a number of acronyms that I may slip into here and a number of partners that I just wanted to level set since we're talking about internal collaborations. At the University of Pittsburgh, FM is Facilities Management, Planning, Design, and Construction, PDC. BHOS is Generally Auxiliary Services and Housing. Sustainability is where I call home at Pitt. Mascaro Center for Sustainable Innovation is our lead academic and research sustainability university-wide center at the university. We also have external partnerships with the Carnegie Museum of Natural History, and Duquesne Light Company is our local utility, which is obviously very important in our partnership for energy use. Next slide. And for those of you who like energy, which I assume is why you're here, here's a fun Sankey diagram of our approximate energy flows for fiscal year 26, which we're in right now. Just acknowledging that we have a variety of source fuels that feed into our overall campus network. 2 shared steam plants that are cooperatively owned, on-site and on-campus chilled water plants. And we end up using chilled water, electricity, natural gas, and steam at the building level while also producing rooftop solar electricity. Next slide. So we're going to talk about a couple projects today, and to get us started, I'm going to call in Evan Petrak, our Senior Manager of Energy and Utilities, to talk about this one. Evan.
Thanks, Aurora, and thanks to everyone else on the call for being here today. So, if you'll recall that earlier slide, as you're going through the diagram, you get closer and closer to the end use of energy, right? And I got started in buildings doing energy retrofits and deep energy retrofits, not really looking at the contractual part too much. It's not as exciting, right? It's not part of the construction. But, as I've moved on from energy auditing and up throughout my career, what you actually have on paper can be a really good place to start, right? And so this is one of the first things that myself and my team worked on when I started here at the University of Pittsburgh about a year and a half ago. Something I really like to message to my peers across organizations and industries that work within facilities and with equipment is everyone's familiar with equipment going out of spec or drifting, but that doesn't happen just to equipment, right? It can also happen to the paperwork processes, maybe some of your energy supply agreements or agreements related to those energy supply. And this is something that is not necessarily unique to DLC or Duquesne Light, our local LDC. Apologies for the acronym confusion, but local distribution company for electricity. But for our large accounts, we have to have a minimum demand on contract with them. We have a demand amount. We are provided at a minimum that amount, but then slightly less than that number that they are contractually obligated to us to provide to us. We have a minimum amount of demand that we must pay for and that enables everyone to kind of be on the same page with capital planning and grid resilience and all that good fun stuff. However, as we implement ECMs or maybe move buildings from one substation to another within our campus microgrid of sorts within our campus distribution, where that demand and that base load is shifting from those different general large substation accounts. So this is honestly a very impactful, what I like to call paper measure that one can take. It's not fun. It's not exciting, but take a look at some of those really large accounts you may have with your electric utility. We took a look with DLC, with our utility provider, and figured out, hey, where can we dial down demand? Oh, hey, no, we actually bought a new chiller. We're going to be installing that in the next year. So we're not going to need the demand that high for this account. This is an annual process that we go through with our utility provider. And it's resulted in some substantial savings, not for every account, but as you can see in the table, about 100K of savings this year. It's actually a little higher than that for when the demand amount is between what was originally proposed to us by the utility company and what we were able to dial down to. There are still some savings when that occurs, but for ease and clarity on this graphic, I just counted the number of months where we were below both, and then we're able to claim the full savings, the delta between those two minimum demand numbers. So, the number one takeaway I'd really like for folks to have, from this slide is take a look at what demand you're obligated to your utility currently, according to the paperwork, and then take a look at the interval data and see where reality actually has you sitting. And this is another good chance to dive into that data, maybe bring in the utilities demand response team if they have one, or your energy supplier's demand response team, and kind of get all three parties on the same page at the same time. Next slide. And then the next one is related to that. It started out as not a paper measure per se, but looking at those utility bills. Hey, I wanted to get my arms around our utility operations and billing operations here at the University of Pittsburgh. How's our power factor looking? There's a lot of strong feelings about power factor from different folks, especially when you start talking to electrical engineers and how do utility companies calculate it. And full disclosure, I'm not an electrical engineer by training, but it's my job to make sure that we are being billed as cost effectively in the long term as possible. And this was another great piece of, hate to say it, but it applies here, low-hanging fruit that was just available. We were able to service and effectively reinstall some cap banks at a couple of our large accounts that were also included on the previous slide. And it resulted in nearly 50K of savings just by having I shouldn't say just by, but by working with our electrical engineers, figuring out what capacitor banks we had on campus, which ones could be better repositioned within our campus distribution system, and making sure that the cap banks should be where they need to be according to those accounts. And it was a pretty impactful ECM from a cost savings perspective. Relatively low overhead, did not have to buy any new equipment. It required digging into the bills, working with our in-house electrical team, and that's electricians and electrical engineers, and then just scheduling the work with the housing and operations folks. Thank you. Next slide.
Thanks for that, Evan. That was great. Somebody in the chat asked, what's a cap bank? That is a capacitor bank. And I'm sure Evan would love to answer a question for you on that once we get to the Q&A. A few other projects just to go through some things that you guys know and some things that maybe you haven't thought about in a while. Lighting, inside, outside, new, historical. We've been doing it all. We have this low-hanging fruit across all of our campuses at the University of Pittsburgh. We've been hitting exterior LED lighting retrofits at 3 of our regional campuses that have a 4.2 to 11-year payback. We use a 2% utility cost escalator and a $51 social cost of carbon in our calculations for all of these that I'm going to be talking about for paybacks. There you can see the collaborators that we've had here. We were working with the Efficiency Network, which is a local ESCO type company in our region on a few of these, not all of them. And the lesson learned here is that exterior LED projects, if you still have them, that low-hanging fruit is still there, and you should definitely start moving it through. For some of these, we're doing both just lamp replacements, and others we have to replace the poles and also add poles for lighting safety on these campuses as well. Next slide. There are also beyond exterior projects. We still have interior lighting retrofit projects. We've done 11 dorms over the past couple of years, a parking garage, and some academic space. The paybacks on those vary based on the building, the type of fixture, the access that may be limited to some of those, especially dorms. You have to really go in the summer. Parking garages are really great if you can especially do dimming on those LED lighting retrofits. That'll get you a lot more faster of a payback. We have found with certain interior projects that if they're specialty, if they're historic, that there are some challenges there, not all of which are surmountable from a financial standpoint, but you might not always just be looking for energy reduction for the sake of energy use reduction there. A lot of the same collaborators on these projects that you'll see, facilities management and sustainability, but also, we had in dorms, you have to partner with housing, and that timing, as I mentioned, is very important. Some other things, I think I said all the lessons learned on this slide, so next slide. Also, windows. Windows are one of those things that, when you talk about paybacks, a lot of people are like, oh, well, they don't pay back. It's just a comfort effort. We have actually had a few window projects at Pitt, both on our Pittsburgh campus and on our Greensburg campus, that have met our payback requirement, which is under 20 years using that utility cost escalator. And part of that is because some of those windows were not operational. Some of them were so old, original to the buildings that, as you can see, were not purpose built for the university, but acquired generally after the university. Afterwards by the university. And so just putting some of the DOE calculator numbers behind our paybacks here was very helpful in making these projects work. And also saying these aren't just energy projects, we are adding comfort and operability to some of these for students, which makes them a lot happier and reduce maintenance costs. That was definitely an important part of these window projects. What we did learn for windows is wall assembly matters, right? Depending on what your wall assembly is, you may not be able to get your ultra highest window performance that you would desire. So you may have to settle there. Scope matters too. There might be a lot of different windows in a building, and you might not be able to replace all of them cost effectively. So depending on what your internal funding is and how you bundle that might matter. Just calling out for your designers what your desired performance is. We found that makes a difference, shockingly. And the windows for us, this crosses into a slightly different realm of Pitt. So pulling in our planning, design, and construction group, since those are part of larger renovations, sustainability, our regional campuses, and housing has been very important there. So making everybody who touches that space part of that project. Next slide. Also, historical buildings. If you've ever seen a picture of Pitt, you've probably seen a picture of the Cathedral of Learning, which is our Gothic Revival 42-story skyscraper. It's coming up on its 100-year birthday. It has its original windows. We just kicked off a window sustainability and preservation study with Smith Group. So this is sort of where we're going next, is really trying to figure out how to rehab, replace the iconic windows in the structure, some of which include stained glass and otherwise. Next slide. Just a few pictures of some of those windows to give you a little bit more of the flavor of the building. There are a lot of considerations here. We haven't undergone it, but we are right now. We looked at a lot of peer studies for buildings that have done this, really trying to consider preservation, envelope, energy, sustainability, occupant comfort, all the things here, while also matching up with HVAC projects that have happened and are going to happen in the future in this building, what the opportunity for rehabbing windows on site may be, which we talked to the Empire State design team when they did that project, and that was something that they and other large buildings have done that really helped reduce costs and meet their historic requirements. So phasing becomes very important for a project like this. Next slide. Last project that I'm going to talk about today is bird strike film. Some of you may be saying, why is this an energy use reduction project? And some of you may say, oh, this is really cool. So we have a few buildings on Pitt's campus, which you can see from the upper map, where bird strikes are a real problem based on how reflective their facade is and how close they are to landscaping. And students got really interested in this project and started advocating for bird strike film on buildings, just a vinyl installation to help reduce bird strikes. The scope has been really variable on this, and we've partnered with the Carnegie Museum of Natural History, which is actually right next door to Pitt's campus. The process here has been long, since it started with students and had to navigate its way through the university, but we did end up internally funding it through sustainability funding, but navigating that process has been something that we've had to do. Next slide. We are working with an internal academic team to demonstrate and document the potential energy savings of the new film for those projects. We're also integrating bird strike film in new construction as well. Next slide. So last but not least, the last thing I wanted to hit was funding. So the University of Pittsburgh has a number of internal sustainability investment funds. I'm going to talk about two today. So if you can hit the next slide. I'm going to talk about the PitCap Capital Fund. Next slide. And the Sustainability Enhancements Fund. One of these is funded through our annual capital budget allocation, and the other through sustainability generated revenue. Next slide. So super briefly, the PITCAP Capital Fund is basically a carbon constrained fund applied to the marginal costs of energy savings from University of Pittsburgh projects. Every project has to have a 20-year payback or less. To date, we've allocated $8.7 million with an average 11.4-year payback, although the individual projects underneath that have had a range from 2 to 24 years. Next slide. And just a flavor of the projects that we've funded over the past year. Those exterior LED lighting projects, which I mentioned, electric range swap out for natural gas ranges, rooftop solar, which I'm not talking about today, but we've done a ton of ultra low temperature freezer rebates. If you have those on your college campus, or if you're a big farmer or something like that, that is definitely worth a change out, some HVAC projects, and just simple envelope projects. Next slide. And then the Sustainability Enhancements Fund, this is a much smaller internal fund that we fund through rec arbitrage and tax credits. It has a tri-allocations group internally, so the funding is created by the built environment, so it is allocated to the built environment from the Office of Sustainability, Facility Management, and Planning and Design and Construction. We've funded things here that don't necessarily always have an economic payback, but are very important otherwise to the university, everything from bike projects to that bird strike film project I talked about, some anaerobic digestion, which really helps us on the materials side, green roof replacements, and water projects, which is something that we're really trying to advance more at Pitt. Next slide. And then we are partnered with the Higher Education Climate Consortium of Pittsburgh. This is a collaboration of 9 colleges and universities in the Pittsburgh region that have been advancing climate action collaboratively since 2007. So I just wanted to give a shout out to our other university collaborators in the region who are advancing work like we are at Pitt also. And that is it. I think next slide. Yep. If you have any questions, reach out. And I know we're going to open it up for questions now, right, Bree?
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much, Aurora and Evan. Really appreciate it. Again, just a wonderful presentation that I know a lot of folks really exemplify. It takes a village to lead to the success of a lot of these projects. So it's really crucial too to just be able to foster that buy-in and those points of connection to lead to a lot of those impactful and achieve those energy savings across being able to dive into some of those projects specifically. So thank you both for sharing. Before we dive into some of those questions that folks have, if I can invite our presenters to come back on screen, and we could take down the questions actually from our view so we get to see all the presenters and their Brady Bunch. Wonderful. While folks are continuing to furiously, I'm sure, input questions, I know we've had a lot throughout the presentations. Just a quick reminder to our virtual audience to enter in those questions at www.slido.com with that event code #or#DOE. And we'll go ahead and get into some of those questions. So one of the first ones I saw coming up here, I'll start maybe first with Dawn. In that spirit of it taking a village, we had a few questions for folks on the city of Richmond's. There's so many different stakeholders that you mentioned needed at the table. Did you have any experience in combating any certain attitudes of folks maybe mentioning they didn't have time for this or it wasn't a priority? I know you shared a lot of this, some strategies around aligning with existing structures and frameworks out there to really connect dots for folks, but curious if you did run into any particular pushback for folks and how you might have dealt with that.
Absolutely. That's why the champions were so important. And I mentioned that kind of 2-year pre-development. That was because we had to get all of the DCOs, our deputy chief administrative officers of the different portfolios, the chief of police, the chief of fire, that executive level buy-in, so that they could then assign. We had a big meeting with all the directors where they were told how important this was, and they are at the table, and they are also appointing representatives who can champion the initiatives, make decisions on their behalf. So leading at the top was really the most important piece of this. Certainly as time goes on, that's when, and everyone kind of walks away because they're focused on other things. It's all the things I went through about continuing to kind of pull folks in, and people fall away. It's just what happens. And so it is, there's a lot of tightrope walking at times to make sure that, sometimes the work's falling more on me. And that's okay. because if I didn't have this team, I'd be doing it all myself and I would get nothing done. So, you take what you can get, but definitely leading at that executive level from the start is important.
Thank you so much, John. I think that's crucial. I know there's some related questions. I might stay with you just for a moment for follow-ups to some of that pieces of information. Were the folks that are involved in the committees, are they technically volunteers, or is this something that's incorporated too into their job duty? And then on that note of champions, some of the audience is wondering how you got some of those champions by and how you keep them engaged too in the pursuit.
Hmm. Well, let's see, that's a loaded question, but certainly there are a lot of people who are interested in sustainability, interested in energy efficiency, come at this with that volunteer mindset, and that's fantastic. There is a place for you, especially when it comes to the education and helping to bring this information back to your departments. But when it comes to actually the hard work of integrating these initiatives into, say, a new park facility and the CIP managers who are working with consultants and engineers, like that takes a lot of um, getting the right folks at the table and recognizing that they need to be involved early with us in the conversation. So it really is all levels of the organization. That's how you change the culture. Yeah, so that's my answer to that part. Did I answer it fully?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think that's really just really crucial to hear just how folks are working closely too and fostering those relationships with the champions and keeping them engaged. So
Mhm.
appreciate you sharing that. Next, happy to turn over to Aurora and Evan. I know it naturally, organically leads to a lot of conversations around not only internal collaboration, but external collaboration. So a lot of folks have honed in particular, I think maybe potentially was the examples you were sharing, Evan, about some of the work you do closely with your utility. And I know this is a big adventure, I'll say, frame for folks that work close to the utility, looking to foster positive relationships. It sounds like you all work closely with them in many efforts. So the audience is wondering how you foster that positive collaboration closely with your utility and maybe any additional successes that you've experienced in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Pitt is uniquely situated. So let me say with that, like we are a very large off taker within a relatively small utility. First, to be super blunt, and I hate to throw names out there. Apologies if any First Energy colleagues are on this call, but they're a very large corporation. They don't necessarily give the same attention to our regional campuses that DLC would give to our Oakland campus, and I mean that makes sense, right? It does go back to that business relationship and what percentage of offtake is that campus responsible for. Some of the other wins though, and this is one that I think can translate even to smaller campuses or building fleets. As demand response and grid has become more important, and as the grid has become more constrained, I've actually found that that is one of the better inroads into developing relationship with the utility. Um, you know, that's something that everyone can typically get behind. Um, Oftentimes the local distribution utility may have some spots on their grid where you that are a little touchier than others, and that might also be where you happen to have a really large utility using building. So I found that that's like a great kind of tip of the spear topic. And then I've been following along some of the comments and questions here. It really is like keeping that relationship up and going and like making sure you're not only calling when there's an emergency. Like do those kind of quarterly check-ins. Maybe it's like the salesperson in me, but hey, person at utility company, how is everything going? Like, what can we do for you as a large energy user? Is there anything else? Like, what aren't we doing that could be done better? And that's actually how the minimum demand contract process came to be. This was a process that had been very regimented pre-COVID, had fallen by the wayside, and then the utility company was picking it back up. And that was the result of one of the things. So.
And just one thing to add there, within utility companies, there are obviously different stakeholders that they have, right? They have their efficiency team, their rooftop solar team, their, billing team, and their EV charging team. And we work across those teams as well. So your relationship may not be with, the utility within a box. It's with many stakeholders within that utility.
Definitely. Very helpful. Thank you both for sharing that. I know there's a huge appetite too, and just very natural and organic just to think through how closely we work together with a variety of different entities there. Well, wonderful. And I do have a question here, probably for both. Maybe start first with Dawn. That really gets to the spirit of any potential barriers that you all came across in questions are shifting here. Just one moment. Let me make sure I'm fully encapsulating this correctly. What are those key barriers that you've had to tackle to make sure that it's led to your program success? And how did you approach those barriers?
Well, one of the first ones that comes to mind is the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer of Operations retired a year ago, and he was the one who championed this with me from the start. And so, it luckily we had enough buy-in from the top, even with a changing mayoral administration and everything going on. We had enough kind of tentacles out to keep it moving. So you can't just rely on one or two people knowing that it's the organization that is owning this team and not individuals. And then the first year we were invited to put together that budget request, and it was very exciting that this is the only interdepartmental working group that would prepare a budget outside of a department. So that was great, except that year the budget was flat, and so they couldn't fund anything. But now we have these kind of Easter eggs as grants come available or new. We can tack them on to other, opportunities. So it's really using what you have and building on it, and not letting anything fall to the wayside.
Definitely. Thanks so much. And that's really important key points, I think, also that you make, Don, in terms of that turnover. That can be really common too, just across organizations, and how to keep that momentum going, making sure that is that core foundation in place. So thank you for sharing that. Next, same question to Evan and Aurora around any particular barriers that you had to tackle. It could be honing in on any of the particular projects that you shared, or just high levels to ensure the success of your programs and how you approached those barriers.
I've got two things, and then maybe Evan has one because he's been in higher education for less time than I have now. So I put this in the chat too for when I answered the question about barriers. We have so many projects that we could possibly do at the university in the built environment. So it really is a balance of all the things that we could do, the big shiny things or the small efficiency things. How do we get all of this done? And how can you bring something up that needs to happen? That can take several years. So too much to do, I think is a big barrier. I'm not sure we've cracked that nut. And then the other thing is, there were a couple questions about the PICCAP Capital Fund and internal funding. Getting the shared goals that led to that eventual annual internal allocation, and then just standing up the process and getting it to work within the university, it takes time and patience and persistence and this ongoing collaborative effort and conversation. Our allocations group meets monthly, and I'm always pinging people on what are the projects that you have? Are they ready to go yet? Because you really have to have a queue of things. So when they're ready to go, you're there with funding to advance them. So just knowing and giving yourself grace in these conversations that it takes time. It's going to take years. But when you start to roll those numbers up and you can say, oh, I've invested this much over this many years and it's reduced this much, this many resources and saved this much money. Those are the big numbers that, administration wants. And you're going to be able to provide that if you have the patience and persistence to get it done.
Definitely. Really key points there. Thank you so much, Aurora, for sharing. Evan, anything to add there? No pressure. I can also transition, but
no, I just want to be time sensitive. Very briefly, the only thing I'd say is most people care about something, and it's just about translating to the right unit or topic for them, right? If I'm talking to real estate folks, they might not care about submetering, but they might care about common space cost leakage. It would be their language, right? And if I'm talking to accounting folks, they don't care about carbon. Like super blunt, right? There's going to be folks that don't care about carbon. So it's all dollars. That's the only thing that matters. And then I could be talking about the exact same project and only refer to it in terms of carbon when I'm talking to more sustainability minded people. So for me personally, it's all about just playing translator to whoever I'm talking to at that point in time of like, this is why we need X, this is why we need Y. And you're really almost just changing, like, it's just a little bit of Mad Libs for that same
Yeah.
project, you know?
That's a really key communication strategy, is knowing your audience and what are those levers to pull to speak their lingo. Really appreciate it. Thank you all too, just for responding with insightful responses to these questions. Next, if we transition just to our final closing updates here, thank you again to our panelists for sharing this important information and for their insightful responses to those questions. Thank you to our audience for posing them. This webinar is part of our Better Buildings, Better Plants winter webinars series for 2025-26. We have a great collection of webinars coming up to close out our series and more to come. Please visit our Better Buildings, Better Plants Solution Center to learn more and register for any upcoming webinars. If you go to the next slide. Speaking of upcoming webinars, we do have one just in a couple weeks on February 24th titled Get Smart, AI and Machine Learning for Energy Efficiency. Join this webinar to learn more about how partners are incorporating AI and machine learning tools into their building optimization strategies. Next slide. Finally, we're pleased to announce that registration is open for our 2026 Better Buildings, Better Plants Summit to be held May 11th through the 13th in Arlington, Virginia, just right next to the DC Reagan National Airport. Secure your spot now for this interactive event and experience dynamic sessions across tracks, workshops, and invaluable opportunities to connect with industry peers and national experts. Subscribe to our summit email list on the Solution Center to learn more about sessions and beyond. Next slide. And then finally, to close, I'd like to thank our panelists again for taking the time to be here with us today. Feel free to contact our presenters with any additional questions if we didn't have time to get to your specific question during that Q&A period. And you'll receive an email notice again when today's recordings, slides, and transcript are made available on the Better Buildings, Better Plants Solution Center. Thank you again, everyone, for joining today's webinar, and we hope you have a good rest of your day. Take care, all.